1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. Sunday show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast, a somewhat off-the-cuff Royal Blue Podcast today on this Sunday afternoon. We are live and I am your host Ian Croll, and joining me in the Royal Blue studio to talk all things Everton we have Chris Beesley. Chris, how are things? All good?
All change, isn't it? A bit of weekend work for us as well, other than the live games with it. Obviously the drama of Sean Dyche's sacking before the FA Cup game on Thursday, then the game, actually being played on the Thursday itself, that was controversial, but means that we've had I wouldn't say the weekend free because we've been beavering away here, working away, but obviously in terms of a fixture that's done and dusted now. The Blues are in the draw for the fourth round that's coming up later today, but yeah, so much to discuss with the monumental news of the second coming of the Messiah, as it were. Yeah, David Moyes is back at the helm.
Absolutely. Well, there is so much to discuss, and it's one of the reasons why we are doing a Sunday pod. Obviously, there is no match. There's no game today. Me and Chris are still working, and the main reason we are working is because we have another episode of Goodison Park, My Home, lined up with another special guest, another former player. He's going to be in the building. Hopefully, yeah. He's due in about 4:30 this afternoon, isn't he? So while we're here, because there's so much to discuss, we thought we might as well do a podcast. We're still going to do a podcast tomorrow, but we thought we'd do a podcast today and just basically react to everything that's happened over the last 48 hours, because as you say, it's a massive change. It's an absolute whirlwind. So, David Moyes, back at Everton. Did you ever think you'd see the day?
I'm not sure I ever did. As you know more than anybody, you were in the room with us, and I'd implore everyone to give that another viewing now. I mean, we've really enjoyed doing that Goodison Park, My Home series, as we mentioned. We've hopefully got another one coming up later today. Absolute special year, a historic one-off year for all Evertonians, the move from Goodison Park to the new stadium. And as part of that, I always felt an essential part of that would be David Moyes as the longest-serving Everton manager of the Premier League era and Everton's most successful Premier League manager. So we're absolutely delighted we were able to get him on. We spoke to him in an unspecified location up in Lancashire back in September. Time he was out of work, working as a UEFA technical observer. He actually described it to me as quite enjoying semi-retirement, but it was. It's obviously it's a hugely popular nostalgia series, but with the emphasis being on the past, on being on those days of the past at Goodison Park. So we didn't know whether he would ever be coming back. I mean, it looked a long way off at the time. I know Sean Dyche obviously wasn't everyone's cup of tea, and there'd been strong feelings after the 6-0 at Chelsea. But at that time, we come on the back of that successful end to the previous season, kept Everton up 2 years on the bounce. And although it had been a difficult start for Everton at that time, at the new season, any sort of thoughts of Moyes returning, or indeed anyone, any sort of managerial change at that point, because obviously the takeover hadn't gone through. They were a long way off. But I've done a piece today. I suppose the longer that conversation went on with him, what I certainly did see was that passion in his eyes for Everton. Again, that had never gone away. And he did actually mention again, very much talking in the past sense, about those times when he did have an opportunity in the past to come back, because I think he's probably gone on record even before he spoke to us that probably been about 3 separate occasions when it was close he could have gone back. And the fact that he was talking about that, he said, shows you his feelings about it. So, we always knew he perhaps had feelings that he would like to come back one day, but whether that would ever actually come to fruition, I mean, there's a big gap between those two things happening. But the events have conspired, and here he is again.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like we need to take a breath just for a second before we get properly into it. Really good summing up there, I think, of your thoughts, your initial thoughts, I guess, and we'll go into a bit of a deep dive. But as mentioned, we are live, so get involved in the pod if you're watching live on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel as well, show support, and obviously always like the video. I think it's definitely worth mentioning. We've kind of put it out again over the past couple of days. Your interview with David Moyes, which we filmed in September of 2024. People can go and watch that now. It's at the top of the YouTube channel, or near the top of the YouTube channel, and I put it out again as a podcast on the audio platform. So if you're a little bit unsure about whether David Moyes is the right man for Everton, then go and listen, go and watch that podcast, and I'll guarantee that he'll get you back on. He'll get you back on board. I mean, when we met him back in September, obviously you did the interview, I did the filming. He was great, wasn't he? Let's face it. He said a lot of really good stuff off camera. He said a lot of good stuff off camera. All positive stuff about the club.
Yeah.
At the time, Sean Dyche was under a lot of pressure, and speculation was certainly rife with regards to who could return who could replace Sean Dyche if he was to be sacked. Obviously, lo and behold, that's all happened. But did you think back then, after speaking to him, after just seeing him and etc., that he maybe had a little bit of unfinished business with the club?
Well, I think he'd had that before we spoke to him, but it was a long time ago now. In that 23 years almost since he was first appointed, and like more time has elapsed now between him leaving first time around and now than he was actually in charge of the club, which was in itself a long period for over 11 years. But that was always maybe his feeling. I think the fact that he's gone on to obviously he's had ups and downs, very much so, since he left Everton. Got his fingers burnt at Manchester United, that spell in Spain with Real Sociedad, and even suffered relegation at Sunderland. But he'd really sort of rehabilitated his reputation at West Ham United over his two spells, particularly his second spell. They're leading them to their first major trophy since 1980, and even then they were a second division club when they won the FA Cup. So when that UEFA Europa Conference League, I think I, like a lot of Evertonians, really, I was pleased to see that when he did that. I wished him well. There were lovely scenes there, seeing him and his father, David Moyes Senior, and a proud old man there with David, who himself is over 60 years of age now, that proudly holding that European trophy. But there was also a feeling that, you just wish that could have been Everton. You just feel David himself had said during that first spell, I think just before 2009, the FA Cup final at the time, he was convinced they were going to win a trophy back then, and that was what everyone was aspiring to. They wanted that. The year before that, I thought, was a big missed opportunity as well in the UEFA Cup. The great run they'd had through the group stages, and then they really should have finished Fiorentina off in that second leg, lost on penalties. So perhaps in that respect, he's, the fact that he's gone on and been able to win a trophy at West Ham, there's always going to be that sort of feeling at Everton that he couldn't do that. I mean, we're a long way off that, unfortunately, at the moment.
Oh, he did get through to the FA Cup fourth round.
Yeah. Well, he's going to have to see who they get later on, but a cup run, why not? But yeah, although that we all know there's a huge job on, that's why I suspect that's one of the main reasons why the Freaking Group have turned to him as that safe pair of hands, as somebody who actually does know the club inside out. Because for all his ups and downs, and there's been a lot more downs recently for Sean Dyche, I think that was one of the things that was pointed at him in that. I know he was at Burnley a long time, but he almost felt a bit detached with Everton. It was never the use of the we or so much, and he's failed to sort of utilise to harness that power of Goodison Park, and hopefully that's something that David Moyes can do. He spoke about that in the interview. I think that'd be something for people to listen out to. How he was always determined to do that, and hopefully he can do that again, because all we wanted for this last season at Goodison Park was just to have that sort of those sleepless nights behind us now and just celebrate the grand old lady for those final months. And let's be honest, nobody's really been able to do that. The highlights have been few and far between, and I mean, other than that sort of 4-0 battering of Wolves, and that was probably more down to their deficiencies. You know, there's been nothing really. There's hardly anything. Even the Crystal Palace win was, was a couple of flurries over 7 minutes from Dwight McNeil, and that was laboured. So, yeah, hopefully belatedly, the celebrations for Goodison Park's final season can begin now. Perhaps that's the wrong word at the moment, celebration, because they're in the thick of a relegation dogfight. But everyone just needs to come together now and sort of fight for that same common cause. And hopefully, David Moyes is the man to unite them and kind of do that for Evertonians.
Yeah, definitely. Just on that with Sean Dyche, this is not a Sean Dyche podcast by any means, but I think you're right. He never had the fans on board. Maybe at the start, you give the manager ample opportunity. And I think as things progressed, he had ample opportunity to continue that and keep the fans on board, even with the points deduction. If anything, you don't want a points deduction, but that should have benefited him. It should have been
to
us
galvanise everyone, yeah.
It should have been us against the world.
Yeah.
Now it did to an extent galvanise us, because I know we lost against United in the immediacy, the first game after that. But then we went on to win 4 in a row, which then basically gave us our points back to an extent. So yeah, I just think he had ample opportunity to get the fans on board, and let's face it, a 13-game winless run probably didn't help the situation, but not many Everton managers have gone on to beat Liverpool so convincingly in terms of a performance, maybe not the scoreline, even though it was 2-0, and he still couldn't get the fans on board. So difficult one to assess. Just back to Moyes and the actual appointment. Under the Freakins, really, whether you agree with the appointment or not, this is not my point here. The Freakins have been swift. Yeah. They've been decisive. Sean Dyche was gone Thursday. David Moyes was practically appointed Friday night. I know it was confirmed by the club Saturday morning. It's a far cry from what would have happened under Farhad Moshiri, where sometimes you would have gone weeks waiting for a managerial appointment. So obviously positives with regards to that.
Yeah, that is one thing, isn't it? The swiftness of the action. They have moved quickly, as you say. I think when Moshiri, obviously burnt his way through 8 managers in 8 years, but when he got rid of his first one, Ronald Koeman, it was obvious he didn't have anyone lined up. He had Unsworth in charge for several weeks.
Panic, wasn't it?
Yeah. If we remember right, he actually went in for Marco Silva at Watford at the time. Everton ended up having to pay compensation, even though they didn't get him that time. It was a mess. Obviously, Silva finally came through the door the next season. But, wildly swinging from one direction to the next. He wanted a young, progressive coach like Silva, and ended up getting Sam Allardyce, and it was a big mess in that. Allardyce was brought in as a supposed relegation firefighter, and the reality was, he was helped by that 4-0 win that Unsworth finished on his last year game in charge as the caretaker boss. But Everton were top half the table by the end of the week, and it was like panic stations. Whereas, complete contrast to that. Whatever you think of the choice of David Moyes, the Freakins have been decisive in their action. It was obviously the speculation during the week that Graham Potter's name was mooted, and while he might have been somebody who's been spoken to informally in the past, I'm not too sure whether it is maybe it was being painted as like a straight fight between West Ham and Everton at one point. I'm not too sure whether that was the case. And then Jose Mourinho's name obviously appearing during the week as well. I mean, he's another one. Obviously, the Freaking Group had him as a first marquee appointment at Roma before, hiring and firing him. He did win them a European trophy in between, same as Moyes, the Conference League. But they have been swift and decisive in their actions. I mean, unlike the rest of us, they won't know David Moyes too well.
We said that, didn't we, before we came in?
They can't do. We've some of us grown up with him, as it were. I think just talking to Connor off camera, he was showing me a picture of him and Moyes. He was in primary school first time round when David first took the reins. But we've known him for many years, both as Everton manager and then as latterly as an opposition manager. But he's not someone to know. So you can imagine. I can only imagine that they've been taking a sounding. They've been listening to voices. Who's been advising them? I don't know. But this is. There's the similarities, I guess. with their latest appointment at Roma, in that, you know, they obviously went through 4 managers last calendar year at Roma, but they ended up with the local hero, as it were. I know they again hired and fired club legend Daniel De Rossi, but again it was a return into, you know, a veteran coach. I mean, he's even a lot older than Moyes. Ranieri coming out of retirement, in, you know, genuine retirement in his 70s to come back there, but it's the same sort of idea of somebody who knows the club and can be seen as a safe pair of hands, because it's absolutely imperative that Everton remain a Premier League club going into the new season at the new stadium. For all the near misses that they've had in recent times, you know, like we were saying, those days should have been put behind Everton, but the fact that they currently have a points tally less than half of what they finished on at the start of Dyche's first season in charge. They stayed up, avoided first relegation in 72 years by a single goal, and that was the lowest equivalent points total in their entire history. That's got to be something you've got to be concerned about. The fact they're only 1 point above the drop zone, as it were now, if you know, if Fulham hadn't scored a last-minute equaliser of the week, they could have been even worse off. So, yeah, it's far too close for comfort at the moment. Big improvements needed in the second half of the season, and the freaking group clearly have played the percentages and feel that David Moyes is their best bet to sort of make those improvements.
You mentioned Conor O'Neill there. Conor is in the office and did decline to come on this podcast today. So make of that what you will.
Too busy to be.
He is a busy man. I just like to wind him up because he does bite. You might be watching from like 20 metres away.
Yeah, that'll show. He's not too busy. Maybe now he's multitasking, listening in to us while getting on his work.
It's interesting, is it? Because we spoke about, before we came in here, like the Freakins probably wouldn't have known too much about David Moyes, you know, his credentials. So do you think, even though this appointment has been very swift, do you think they would have had to like speak to certain people in the club? Do you reckon they would have maybe got outside advice? What do you think the process would have been for that? I mean, obviously, Thelwell's the director of football. Yeah. Surely they would have spoke to him.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually, what you say, though, in terms of Kevin Thelwell. As I don't know what his thoughts would be on the process. He's not spoken, hasn't he, as of yet, in terms of any sort of public announcements. I'm not sure if he actually did speak on the record after Dyche was appointed, so maybe there isn't a precedent to this, but it's something we've discussed on the pod quite a lot, isn't it? If deployed properly, whatever you think of the director of football role, if you're going to have a director of football, they should be involved heavily in.
Well, they should appoint the manager.
Yeah, that's what Marcel Brands wanted to do, and I think that was the fact that he couldn't do that and was hampered with that a couple of times. Why he was so frustrated at Everton, because that was part of the problem. Certainly, I think it was in 2019 when Silva went. Brands has been on record about this now. He wanted Arteta. That was one of the times that Moyes felt he was close to coming back, but then Ancelotti got sacked and Moshiri went with that one. So yeah, director of football should be involved in the process. I don't know how much Kevin Thelwell have had to say on that, and that could be interesting either way, depending on how that one went. Some interesting quotes as well that we included from the Moyes interview when he spoke about the fact that when he was Everton first time round, obviously, like we're saying, quite a while back now, so directors of football weren't as many of them in the English game back then, and he was very heavily involved in his own recruitment. He was involved in so many aspects of the club, and it's quite different to that now. But you see the piece about that if you want to find out more about that. He said how he will happily work with a director of football, but the difference being that these people, if they're going to suggest names to you or bring certain players in, they also have to share the responsibility for that one. But in terms of the Freakins sounding people out, I don't know who they'll have spoken to. I'm sure they've got a wide networks of contacts and want to make this decision lightly. I mean, what they can see, they can see the black and white of his CV in terms of what he's achieved in the past at Everton, and 11 seasons there, 9 top half finishes, including the club's highest ever Premier League finish of 4th, and I think he finished his last 2 years, by his own admission, probably poor years for Liverpool, but to finish above Liverpool back-to-back seasons, that's no mean feat. Showing what you can do in the past. And then, like I say, the way he sort of progressed since then as well. He's had the experience abroad Real Sociedad, obviously the short and not so sweet spell at Old Trafford, but managing a giant club like that, Manchester United, suffering relegation with Sunderland, and hopefully learning from those mistakes. We know there's a lot of players in the current Everton squad who have also suffered relegation in the past, including Jordan Pickford under Moyes at Sunderland, who was there that season. But hopefully it can all come together. And like I said, these recent experiences at West Ham United, I think a lot of Evertonians felt he was harshly treated by a lot of their fans. They've got sort of delusions of grandeur, I'd almost say, in terms of the playing style that they want. And obviously Lopetegui, his successor, has been in and out the door since then, and perhaps be careful what they want to wish for. So yeah, hopefully when you've got that whole package, you've actually got somebody very different than when he was first appointed, a rookie manager with no Premier League experience. What you've got here is somebody with vast experience now, and somebody who really knows the territory, and maybe that was what appealed to the Friedkin group.
He'd recently gone on the record, I think it was with the BBC, and I can't read this word for word, but I'm sure he said something along the lines of, I don't want to be going back to a club in a relegation zone or the relegation battle. Obviously, Everton quite clearly are in a relegation battle. Is it telling then that he's kind of come back to Everton? Did you have any worry or sense that, say, like for instance, for me personally, when Wolves sacked their manager after we beat them 4-0, looking ahead, I was thinking, well, we still could sack Sean Dyche, so who are we going to get? And Moyes was obviously the clear favourite. I did have a slight worry that Wolves would be the only other club in that bracket down the table who might be able to entice Moyes out of well, not obviously his semi-retirement. Obviously, Southampton had sacked their manager. Yeah. They got one in straight away. I don't think, obviously, Moyes would never go there. Leicester sacked their manager. They went for a kind of, not unknown, but improving in move on Nistelrooy. I didn't think he'd go there hard. I think Wolves was the only one. Lo and behold, they didn't. They went for Vita Pereira as well. But Everton seemingly the only club that would, get him up for it. Basically, get him up for another job down in a team down in the relegation zone.
Yeah, I really don't know whether those teams considered him or whether he would consider them. I certainly wouldn't have thought it was out the realms of fancy that he would be, that he wouldn't join a Leicester City or a Wolves. I thought that could always be a possibility. I know when we spoke to him back in September, as the most recent out-of-work Premier League manager and somebody who'd won the European trophy just a year previously, I think he was going to appeal to any Premier League club who in the bottom half.
I just think that he thinks himself. He's a big enough name. He's a good enough manager. He's just recently won a European trophy with West Ham. He had a fairly decent season in his last season. No, it probably wasn't what the West Ham fans wanted in terms of performance, but I'm sure in his last season he finished 9th.
Right, yeah.
And I mean,
they were never in relegation trouble,
no,
anyway. Yeah.
But all the teams above them, so the top 8, you're looking at basically the big 6. Then you've got like Newcastle. Yeah. I think maybe Brighton as well. But yeah, I just found it interesting. Yeah. I mean, he's got the Everton connection as well, so it's basically he's come out of he said semi-retirement to us. I think he said that tongue in cheek. He was always wanting to get back into management. He was always wanting to find the right opportunity, and quite clearly in his mind, he's getting paid obviously a lot of money for it. He's going to be compensated, but Everton seems to be the right challenge, probably for what maybe his last job in his footballing career, maybe.
Yeah, he did. He's got a huge affection and respect for the club. I mean, he mentioned that well. He's told it a few times. The fact that as a young manager, there was also that Blackpool director who said on to him, Everton's a club for you, Everton's a club for you. And then I said to him later in the conversation, about once that Alan Ball quote, once Everton's touched, nothing be the same again. And he said he believed in that. I think it's got a massive place in his heart. We never expected this day to come, but there you have it. David Moyes, poised to be the last manager at Goodison Park, and as things stand, the first manager at the new stadium, and what a transition and what a prospect, and to lead the club to their new home. Yeah, I think that Everton are very much a real special place in his heart. Obviously, it's his longest managerial spell by a long chalk. I know he's gone on obviously to achieve greater things with the trophy at West Ham United. But coming back to Everton, maybe he wouldn't have gone to another club who were in and around the relegation zone. So for that, I guess we've all got to be extremely grateful.
And there was a lot of debate, certainly amongst Everton fans, regarding how long he should be offered during his second stint. I'm sure there was some tough negotiations with regards to that with the Freakins, but whatever it is it 2.5 years? Yeah. Is that what it is? So, I mean, do you see this as a short-term appointment, for getting Everton through this season, surviving, and then that's it, I guess? And then if he does that, then he takes us into next season, and then you've got probably the season after that. How do you view the dynamic of the length of contracts?
Yeah. Well, I think when Allardyce came in, he wasn't ever going to accept it the short term. I think these managers, they don't want that because they're just a glorified sort of interim or caretaker manager otherwise, aren't they? I think it's only like the Chelsea who get away with stuff like that. They will always demand the longer contract, and I imagine that'd be part of negotiation. Say, look, if I'm going to come in and to save you here, I want a decent to turn this around. Be like,
but it gives you more authority though as well, doesn't it? I think for all the issues that Dyche had, and there was a lot of issues this season, one of them was the fact that his contract was running out. Yeah. So players were probably in the back of their mind thinking, why do I need to kind of play for you? You're going to be gone anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you've got your own personal pride, and you don't want. You don't want Everton going down and that on your CV. But I do think there is an issue, and I think even Moyes spoke about that in the interview we did. When a manager does enter the final season of a contract, it's not always like the place falls apart. But they're all human beings, and I suppose we're used to it with players. Obviously, we've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin's situation now in the last 6 months, and he's far from the only one whose contract's running down. But when a manager is sort of on those final months, you do wonder whether that actually played a part, because the fact that Everton's points tally is much lower this season, and has that been a factor in there? I'm sure that David Moyes is fully expecting to see this through as long as he can, and I hope that if they achieve their objective this season and retain their Premier League status, which is the reason he's been brought in here, he's got a chance that whoever was going to be manager for next season, I think we all kind of knew, I think probably even Sean Dyche knew from early in this season, it wasn't going to be him. He wasn't going to be the man to lead Everton into the new stadium, but whoever was going to get that chance, and at the moment that's David Moyes with his 2.5-year contract, that there's a massive rebuilding progress. You can more or less start again in terms of the amount of changes that are possible over the summer. There could be so many key changes in the playing personnel. I think the only thing I would guarantee, I think I'm not sticking my neck out here, is I don't think he's going to do another 11 years.
Well, if he did, then that would mean he's successful. I mean,
he'll be 72 as well.
Yeah, just sticking on that point, how old will we be?
We probably don't want to think about that.
Let's not think about that. I just wrote something down there. So, I mean, I guess in a way, if he does do well, that will be an even tougher decision by the Freakins to make, to say, what are we going to do? Do we just stick with him and carry on until the end of that contract? I guess even if he gets through this season, which obviously we pray to God that we do, he's obviously going to be given. You would think he'd be allowed to take on the next season as well. So imagine if he does really well in that season, then fantastic.
That's a good issue. It's good problems.
No, I know, but I feel like it's a tough decision. Just because I feel like there's a lot of reservation from certain fans about we need this long-term, young, dynamic manager. I'm not saying Moyes is not dynamic or whatever, but from what we understood, if Dyche was to keep his job until the end of the season, Everton and the Freakins wanted a manager who was still in work for the summer.
Yeah.
So just it's in
in football, you just can't get ahead of yourself too much about.
Let's just stay up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've just appointed a fella in his 70s at Roma, so yeah, Moyes is that dynamic young manager compared to Claudio Ranieri.
Yeah. I mean, any reservations from your part? He's the right man for the job, I guess. I did have a couple of reservations in the back of my mind, and I discussed them through with Gavin and Joe on Friday's pod, and then I think I inevitably just talked myself into that this is the right decision, because I think I laid it out as if Moyes was to then, he was talking to the Freakins, but then to say, right now I'm walking away, where would Everton actually go? Who would they go to? Exactly. There wasn't really many other candidates out there, so Moyes was the first choice, and it was done so swiftly. Yeah. But yeah, reservations or anything?
I do. I've not been shy about saying this. I just think as a general rule in football, I think you got to be very careful about going back anywhere. Howard Kendall did it at Everton. He did it twice, and even Kendall, there was it was a 17-year gap between his start of his first stint and the end of his second. And this is an even bigger gap now. This is, like I said, it's 23 years. David Moyes can now sign players who weren't even born when he took over Everton for the first time. So, I am always wary about that, about going back. And I think Gav sort of had reservations, put words in his mouth, but in terms of, because there's always there's always the fear, isn't there? You could sort of ruin your legacy from first time round and all of that. So that has to be something that would have played on his mind as well, as much as anyone else's, because he doesn't want to spoil all those memories from first time round. But he clearly thinks, he's backing himself, and he thinks that he's had relatively good record, as much as I think people at West Ham, a lot of them are ungrateful. He's been a relatively successful Premier League manager relatively recently, as recently as last season, and the European Trophy the year before. So it's not like, when I suppose Liverpool dusted off the mothballs on Kenny Dalglish, although he actually won a trophy in that first season when he placed Hodgson. But, he'd been out of the game at the sharp end for a long time. It's not sort of comparable to that. David Moyes, like I said, was the most high-profile out-of-work Premier League manager. So, there are always reservations about going back, and will it be the same? It's not. It's going to be very, very different. But I think everybody just has to get behind him now, such as the situation at Everton. It's very unfortunate that they shouldn't be in this position, as far as I'm concerned. In that. Finished would have been 11th. Level on points with 11th place Brighton last season if it hadn't been for the points deductions. I was pleased with the work they did in the difficult summer transfer window, retaining the services of Jared Bramthwaite and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, while also able to add to that squad. So I thought that they should have been there or thereabouts again. I didn't expect, like a lot of people, I wasn't expecting top half finish, but what I was expecting was to be sort of comfortably above those clubs who were fighting relegation, probably sort of the upper end of the bottom half of the table. So the fact that they really are in the thick of it, it's not been good enough. Hence why Sean Dyche, who admitted himself not had enough victories, is out of a job. So it's a huge job on his hands. It's very difficult circumstances. It's not fitting for Goodison Park's final season. So let's hope they turn that around now that David Moyes and the team are able to start giving those, first and foremost, those results fitting of Goodison's final season, but also those moments for the fans, those hopefully a few highlights between now and May. We get a few games and just get the old lady rocking again, because far too many times this season, because of the kind of football, whether it's been win, lose or draw, and there's been far too few, there's been not enough victories by a long chalk, but just playing the football which would galvanise the fans and get the supporters rocking again, which I said that Dyche was able to do in that famous Derby win, but on the whole just failed to do on too many occasions.
What do you think then would constitute success for Moyes? Obviously, the first one's keeping up this season, but in terms of the longer plan, is it just literally stability is that in terms of expectation wise?
Yeah, I don't think we can kind of look beyond that at the moment. I think staying up this season and then very different team next season. So providing they do stay up, you'd be actually looking to improve on that the following season. And I'm going to be realistic at this moment. Just even mid-table mediocrity is a huge improvement to what's been served up. I just don't think you can sort of get beyond that. I mean, think of where Everton could have been if 777 had got the green light at any point. You know, if Abdoulaye Doucouré hadn't scored that goal, you know, it could have just been an absolute mess. Now, it really was so close to that. So the fact that they've got the freaking group in now, they've had that change of manager, whatever you think about David Moyes, who's got a very impressive body of work under his belt, both at Everton and subsequently now in his recent roles. So we've just got to sort of be a united force between now and the end of the season, and just sort of take it from there. You just can't get too ahead of yourself. You just need to sort of get over the line again. It's an absolute crying shame that it's come to this, another relegation dogfight, but that is what it is. And David Moyes needs to start picking up those points as soon as possible.
I like it already. Yeah. Throwing the boot in on him there, get the points in.
Well, he does whoever it was, wasn't it?
No.
They have to, don't they?
I'm only joking.
Yeah.
Confirmation then, I guess, that backroom staff, Billy McKinley, Leighton Baines and Alan Irvine, I guess he has really got the band back together with that one. I don't know too much about Billy McKinley. I know he was with him at West Ham, but we were joking before we came on that Leighton Baines potentially now won't be the first ever manager at Bramley Moor when Everton play do the test events for the under-18s. We don't know if that's the case, but we were speculating.
Sure. Yeah.
Everton, I'm sure he'd be busy helping David Moyes out, so you don't know.
Might give him the night off to do that. No, I really don't know. There's no room for sentiment as the, but I'm not too sure. Like you say, if he is if he steps up to the first team duties, perhaps it will be someone else, both on a week-to-week basis and for that particular fixture. Who knows at this stage? I mean, one thing that needs to be sorted as well is obviously the goalkeeping coach as well. There's been talk of Chris Woods, who was initially at Everton 27 years ago under Walter Smith before Moyes came to the club. So that one obviously needs sorting out. But yeah, obviously with Steve Stone, Ian Woan, and then Billy Mercer, who was the previous goalkeeping coach, all going out the door. There's going to have to be a whole new staff in there, and there's been mooted, as you said, another of our Royal Blue guests on Goodison Park, my home, Alan Irvine, could be a role for him somewhere. Well. Yeah, definitely a very astute man. Obviously, David Moyes' assistant in those early years, first time around, speaks with sort of great insight on that era. So yeah, another one to listen out for, and like you say, getting the bang back together. But yeah, Billy McKinley was his assistant at West Ham United. So the three of them are all Glaswegians, and somebody he knows and trusts. Leighton Baines, somebody who actually initially brought to the club, made Everton's most expensive defender back in the day there, 2007. He brought him in from Wigan Athletic. So yeah, people he knows, and who knows, maybe even in time Seamus Coleman might have some sort of role in that, because I'm sure he'd be another one. If he took charge with Leighton on Thursday, he was well respected within the dressing room.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I'll move the Alan Irvine interview that you did with him up higher up on the YouTube for anyone who hasn't watched that and would like to. I'm going to go to some comments because we've had loads, so we're going to finish off as well. But any particular moments from Moyes' first stint that stands out? Obviously, we're hoping probably for a few more nice moments. I don't know what those moments are going to consist of, but any moments from his previous 13-year reign?
Apart from when he used to skip me about me clobber.
Yeah, that was a weird one, that wasn't it? Because you're always like sharp.
That wasn't a one-off. That's what I'm on about. That's from his first spell. Yeah, I mean, I was a much younger man back then. Yeah,
you're gonna have to go buy some new suits then for the press conferences, Chris.
I think the Dave Humphrey say he was going to come and dressed as Moyes Villarreal 2005 with the blazer on and the slacks. But no, in terms of the football, Conor and I were discussing that as well before. I think there's a couple of games sort of came into my head. Fiorentina, of course, the huge disappointment. I think they should have got over the line that night, but I mean, it was an incredible atmosphere. I remember the 7-1 against Sunderland, Roy Keane's Sunderland. I thought that was some of the best football that they played. They absolutely destroyed them that day. I mean, I wasn't at the Manchester United game, the big dunk. Conor mentioned that one, and he thought as a younger fan, as somebody, I mean, I'm too young to remember Bayern Munich, but certainly for the younger generation of them, that was the sort of closest they had to that real sort of bear pit nighttime atmosphere, and obviously big dunks goal there. Yeah, it was just different. And I remember at the time, it's we look back on it now as a golden era because Everton have fallen so far at the time. But I remember I was actually frustrated a lot of the time because I just felt they sometimes fell a bit short. They really, perhaps maybe that's what he's thinking himself. They really could have gone on and won something back then. It's such a shame that they didn't. Obviously, he mentioned himself, you know, the Derby wins at Goodison Park. Obviously, the 3-0 when Andrew Johnson bagged the brace, Dan Gosling in the FA Cup. So, yeah, there was plenty of those, and even like that. Actually, the European nights as well. I was fortunate enough to do Everton on European duty as well, and from the freezing cold in Alkmaar at AZ. That was a great one actually. Louis van Gaal. He wasn't happy that night. AZ had like the longest unbeaten home record in Europe, and Everton with a bit of a scratch side. They gave Jack Radwell his debut that night. Went and beat them on their own turf, and that was a good one. So yeah, there was plenty of highlights there.
I was in Amsterdam. I couldn't get a ticket for that, but we did travel over.
Okay,
as I'm sure thousands of other blue. It was freezing, wasn't it?
So yeah, that, and then just as I was talking there, I thought, of course, you know, Arsenal, Wayne Rooney, remember the name? That's another one from early on. So yeah, so many, and actually one just on a more general theme, and it was something, to be fair, David was very dignified about because he didn't want to speak about subsequent Everton managers. But if you look back on those games, unlike the recent Everton matches, the amount of times, particularly at Goodison, they went 1-0 down, but they came back and won the game. That they were great at doing that. You know, 2-1s, whether it was like Tottenham Hotspur, like the Late Show. There's quite a lot of games like that, and it maybe shows the backbone in the squad, the mental strength, that the fact that, you know, they could go 1-0 down, come back and win the game with the power of Goodison. So we'd love to see a bit more of that.
It feels like I'm shamefully trying to plug the interview with me. I am, but also if you do go back and watch it, I remember at the time when I was like there in person and even subsequently watching it back again, it genuinely made you think that how much of a good job he did. Yeah. He's always going to be remembered by rival fans, opposition fans, for not winning a trophy and maybe even ridiculed a little bit. And we were always devastated and gutted that he was never able to get that trophy. I know we came certainly close a couple of times and very close against Chelsea in the FA Cup. But the job that he did from coming in 2002 and then everything else subsequently that, I mean, football changed massively in the 90s, but football changed massively in the noughties as well. Mm-hmm. You know, with the Chelsea, I know City were a little bit later, but we had the resurgence of United. Liverpool ended up going win the Champions League. You know, he had to deal with all that. And he says in the interview, you know, Bill Kenwright said, we can give you $5 million a year. Yeah. Like, what sort of a shoestring budget is that? I get it. It is what it is. But that's literally what he was having to deal with. And some of the players that he brought in, I mean, some of the moments for me, the Derby wins, obviously, too few and far between, but the 3-0, the Carsley one, United semi on penalties. Yeah. United 3-3. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, when he ran on at the end and he was complaining.
We were 3-1 down and then we came back to 3-3. That was incredible. And probably the one standout for me wasn't even a Goodison one, it was an away one when we beat Sunderland in the FA Cup quarter-final 2-0. The fans that night were insane. Bodies flying everywhere, wine all over me. It was really good. I enjoyed it. Fiorentina as well was special, but unfortunately we did lose that one. Yeah. Okay, quick go through the questions. So travels for 6649. That's the YouTube name. First time I've managed to catch this podcast live. I love it. Cheers, lads. Mm-hmm. I think we're lucky Moyes is available. I think give him a fair chance, he might push us forward. Yeah. Fair comments. Paul Hewitt, still can't believe so many people are against Moyes coming back. I don't get it. I mean, I think a lot of people are saying that because, subsequently, when he left, he was given a rousing reception. I don't care what anyone says, that last home game against West Ham.
Yeah.
I think it's things after that people feel a little bit aggrieved. The stuff that he did when he was at United, when he tried to sign Fellaini and Baines. But we move on, I think, don't we? Ian Lyons, thanks for the Sunday pod. What's the David Moyes pod? And I agree. He's won me over, and I can't wait to see what he does.
What's nice to hear is somebody who maybe did have reservations, just hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were. You see what his feelings are about Everton. Yeah, no, obviously the people were hurt at the time. He did run down his contract, and he likes to tell the tale about how he was handpicked by Sir Alex.
Well, he was, wasn't he?
To come round his house and all that lot. But I think. Football's a business, and I think Gav said a lot of things about, to be fair, with Howard Kendall and Everton. There's always, these managers do move on, and I think that
given
comment
everything,
there,
given everything that he could at the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to really butcher this name, so I apologise. Hakon Isaac Sarach said, I'm sure Moyes has watched all matches like a real fan, so he already has a feel for the players and where the squad is weak. He'll probably have a good idea which players and where to play. I mean, you think he's done his research prior to signing on the dotted line?
I'm sure he'll have been watching a lot of Premier League football with a keen eye on Everton in particular. I think he'd just be doing that anyway. Even if he had no aspirations to return, he'd have been doing that. So I'm sure he'll be up to speed and which areas of the squad needs to. I mean, you only have to look at the league table as well and see that FC need to score more goals. That's priority number one, isn't it?
Quite a statement here from Royal Blue Rich. We won't go down. I could be the manager, and if all I did was select a team and say to them, go out and try and win games, we wouldn't go down.
Wow. I wouldn't share Royal Blue Rich's confidence.
Get him on the team. Get him on in the dugout with Moyes.
Yeah, maybe he could be there. Yeah.
No, fair play.
Just have an arm wrestle with Billy McKinley.
Yeah. Okay, we'll finish off. Just one final thing. Season tickets for the new stadium go on sale, don't they, tomorrow?
Yeah.
So, kind of a new dawn for a lot of fans looking out for a season ticket.
Well, this is it, isn't it? It should be. Everyone should be absolutely made up. Everyone should be so excited. Now, I live across the water in New Brighton. I can see it most days when I'm walking down. I'm down in all weathers, as you know, and that by the banks of the Blue Mersey when it was Storm Darragh 1-0 to Storm Darragh against me that day. But you see it there gleaming. I love driving past it at night time, and you look over and it's all lit up blue as well. It looks incredible, For all the absolute nonsense, it's not going to get built. Looks like a Bundesliga stadium. Is that even a criticism at all? People say also. But it's obviously the one which we have to avoid, the old chestnut, best stadium in the Championship. Like when they come out with that one, like they're the absolute first person to say that. That's the one that Everton have to avoid, don't they? It sounds obvious, but yeah, that's this should be a time of real excitement for Evertonians. It's becoming real now. We know it's next, as we've mentioned already, you mentioned next month, the first trial game there. 10,000 Evertonians are going to get a chance to go in. And then whatever, 20-odd thousand other Evertonians, because to be fair, they are splitting it, so you don't get to go to both. So that's more or less, the whole sort of season ticket holders are going to get a chance of a sneak peek before the official move for next season. So yeah, it's all becoming very real, and this is why it's sort of all crystallised now, come together that maybe with the Freaking Group, we've got to make sure that journey is there, make sure to sort of make all those sad jokers sort of choke on their words, best stadium in a Championship, that never comes to fruition. They just have to make sure that they get over the line in the Premier League this season, and I think that's why David Moyes is back.
Okay, well, we will finish off. Just a reminder to people who are watching live or listening on our audio platforms for this. We're going to be back tomorrow, but again, we were discussing this before we came in. We don't know what time, because we don't know if David Moyes is going to do his press conference tomorrow, so we're assuming that it's going to be a kind of an announcement. David Moyes is the new manager of Everton, and a pre-Aston Villa match press conference as well. So kill two birds with one stone and that. But like I say, we haven't had confirmation, but we will be back tomorrow in some form. Just keep an eye out on the Times on the Royal Blue YouTube channel. Finish off. Any final thoughts? All good?
Yeah, just safe travels for our unnamed guest who's on his way up. Hopefully he's
panicking
okay.
a bit, aren't you?
Well, just till he's through that door. Yeah,
and we will reveal who that is soon enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been Ian Croll and joined by Chris Beesley, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.